Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Godly Woman Network and a very special offering that we bring to you beginning today, but we'll be with you every last Thursday of each month at 4 p.m. Eastern. Myself and my dynamic, esteemed co-hosts, Reverend Dr. Rocco Errico and Reverend Hanny Freiwat. Together, we are three of the four amigos that make up the board of directors at the Nuhra Foundation. And this month, we begin a monthly series. And today's episode is entitled, as earnestly as I could offer it to you, Allow the East to Speak for Itself. As many of you know, I am a descendant of Assyrian heritage, born here in the United States of America, proudly a patriot to my American roots, but also honored to be of the heritage of the Aturaye, the people who carry the language of Ishwa Nasraya, Mshicha, Joshua of Nazareth, the anointed one. And that language has taken many forms. Assyrians have one dialect, but that language gave us Hebrew, Arabic, Chaldean, and a rich history of culture and facts. So, this conversation each month, yes, absolutely, we will be digging into the Holy Bible, but we will be doing it with the lens of idioms from the culture, books and knowledge that unlock the truth of the psychology, the language, the intention and dynamic that worked underneath everything, that if you don't have that, you really cannot understand the context of these writings. And it's my honor to introduce you, Rabbi Errico, and you, Reverend Hanny, to begin our conversation today. Welcome, Shana.
Shana.
Of course, I have to start with you, Rabbi Errico, because you have had just a life that needs to be a movie. Honestly, Rabbi, it should be a movie.
May I say something right now before you go into that?
Please, please.
You think people will know what we mean when you say Robbie? Because some people think that's my first name, Robbie. Again, see,
his name is not Robert.
Cultural, we're dealing with something.
That's really good. That's good. Let's start that off. Let's start that off. Would you like to explain?
Well, yes, this is an ancient Aramaic term of speech. Jesus was called a rabbi, but we're not used to hearing that funny sound, Robbie, because it sounds like a first name, Robbie. Because I've been asked that. They thought, is that your first name? Everyone calls you Robbie Errico. I said, no, it's a title. It is not a name. It is a title that was used in the ancient world. And my professor who taught me, my teacher, Dr. George M. Lamza, I always called him also Robbie. So there are a lot of Robbies, but not as a personal name, but as a title. And it comes, people are used to here in the West, are used to the term rabbi. They use the term, but it has a different connotation than rabbi, like someone the head of a synagogue and a teacher. It in the Semitic language of Aramaic and culture, it was used for a malpana, and a malpana means a teacher of a high degree, because it comes from the word rabba. Rabbi comes from rabba. Rabba means great. Great. So when you call someone a rabbi, it means you are a great teacher. You are an extraordinary teacher. You're above. It's equivalent almost to our term doctor. You see, when we say Dr. So-and-so in philosophy, Dr. So-and-so in psychology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that's what it means. You are of a higher rank in your teaching. You're still a malpana, but a teacher, but of a higher rank. That's why they called Jesus Rabbi also. because I'm using the English term Jesus, but it's really Yeshua. They called him Rabbi Yeshua, but actually in the ancient form, the way they said it is Rab.
Mhm.
Rab. Rab, I would be Rab Errico, and Jesus would
Mhm.
be Rab
Rabbi
Yeshua
Yeshua. Mhm.
instead of, because the ancient, they dropped the little I sound, but in Neo Aramaic, which you speak, and they would pronounce the little I and they say Rabbi, and that's why they always think, sometimes when people refer, they think my first name is Robbie Errico, but it's not. It's a title, an ancient title.
That's so beautiful, Rabbi. And I thank you for sharing it. And it's so perfect given people think that Jesus' last name was Christ,
Right, exactly.
right? So this is a great way to kick off this series, Rabbi. This is chef's kiss to the spirit for guiding this one.
And
That's
I want to add
perfect.
something to that.
Please,
In,
please.
in my culture today, in our Palestinian dialect, we use, and actually in the Lebanese dialect as well, we use the word Rabba to describe somebody who is mastered something. So you like if you're doing something, like even cooking, and
Mm-hmm.
somebody could say, "Oh, you are Rabba." It's you are like the best at it, or you mastered it. So, and it's common. I have some cousins that can't say maybe it's 7 words without putting the word Rabba in the middle of it to
Mm-hmm.
show that you've mastered it. So it's still used that way in the Levantine dialects in Palestine, Lebanon, probably Syria and Jordan. So
For
it,
us,
yeah,
for Assyrians, we say it's drawn out a little bit. We say Rabbi,
mhm.
Rabbi, right?
Uh,
But we use the word Rabba as very. Rabba
Mm-hmm.
means very much. It's a greatness. It could mean greatness of stature, caliber, or a lot of something, or just great quality of it. It's used in a lot of different nuances.
yeah.
Interesting.
Mhm.
All right. So now y'all are understanding why we're sitting together because you see, I'm an Assyrian born in America to immigrants and refugees. Reverend Hanny is an immigrant, as he is letting you know. And Reverend Rabbi Errico is an Italian of Italian descent to immigrants, right? So we've all kind of got this international flavor. But Rabbi Errico spent 10 years with Dr. Lemsa, who was my father's uncle. So the connection that is here, I mean, I can't help but think that we've been divinely appointed. But today's conversation is genuinely so that you, our audience, can hear the East speak for itself. Because these mistakes that we make with our Western ears are innocent. We don't mean to misunderstand so much of it. I'm not going to get into politics and agendas and all that today. We won't, we're not, we'll do that at some point, but not today.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I would just like to allow these gentlemen in particular to express the breath and the essence of the East authentically without the telephone game of Aramaic and Hebrew to over to Greek and over to Latin, Latin Vulgate, over to English, 57,000 interpretations in English. Hold on a second. Somebody did something a bunch of years ago, and yet not many at all, and his name was Reverend Dr. George M. Lemsa. And what George Lemsa did and why it was unique, and I'm going to have Rabbi Errico talk to us about this in just a second, is he was an immigrant born in the 1800s who was not just noted for being someone who translated the ancient Peshitta tradition of the text directly from the ancient language to English. No, nothing in between. Just that's what it says in Aramaic, biblical Aramaic. Okay, that's not even what Hanny and I walk around talking in our current ethnicities and dialects and languages. Biblical Aramaic directly to common modern day English. Now, people will say, well, he's not the only one that did that, Rebecca. I hear this sometimes. Yes, but he's the only one who did it who was actually an Easterner.
Mhm.
So, Rabbi Errico, would you please speak on this?
Yes, that's what makes this translation so unique and outstanding, is because most biblical translations, and I should say translators, learned the biblical languages, both Hebrew and Greek, which they use Hebrew for Old Testament and Greek for New Testament. They're learning it from a book, not coming from the culture itself, except if they read it in a book, and which makes a difference. Dr. George Lamza, he this is his native tongue. Of course, he spoke what we call Neo-Aramaic, but he studied under Oxford and Cambridge men that came from England into this area of the Near East and taught him how he learned the English. But he also learned from his teachers, Assyrian teachers, who spoke the ancient form of the language. And he learned to read and write the ancient, what we call Estrangela. When we talk about the New Testament, what was it written in? According to the ancient Near Eastern people, now they didn't attend any of our seminaries that teach the opposite, but what they teach is that they call the writings of the New Testament, they call it Estrangela. Estrangela means gospel writings. That's what it means. Gospel writings. So when we're looking at the gospel from Aramaic, it's not Neo-Aramaic. It's we have two forms of it today available to us. And when I tell you, when I was first working with Dr. Lamza, they were not available. You have Neo-Aramaic, then you have Classical Aramaic, then you have one more, which I'm, excuse me, talking about. I should have brought water. I'm going to have to stop a minute.
That's okay. Take your time. Take your time. I wanted to say we've got the YouTube channel live. I was just getting a little note from somebody to say, okay, we're on and we can see you. If you're on our YouTube channel live right now, I really appreciate you being here watching us live. There is a chat thread. Okay, and I just entered into that chat thread the word that Rabbi Errico is teaching us about right now, estrangela. Okay, is the word that he's speaking about. It's a type of font. It literally means the gospel writings. Okay, and so if you have questions for us that we can hopefully get to today with our conversation, just put them in the chat. All right, we'd like to include what your questions are. Anything we don't get to today, we will get to another time. But thank you for sending me that note. It's great to have you with us. And whenever you're ready, Robbie, please continue.
Yes, I'm ready now. Because
Please.
here it is. This, for instance, this is the printed form of, well, I told you, this is called, this is the printed form of the Aramaic, and this is known as Classical Aramaic. Not the spoken Neo-Aramaic that's among Assyrians and Chaldeans today here in America who are speaking this language, but it's called Neo-Aramaic. It is almost, not quite, like the Classical Aramaic or the Estrangela. Classical Aramaic and the...
There you go, Robbie.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
This is what he's teaching you
Okay,
guys.
this is the Estrangela. This
Here.
alphabet here. Aleph, Bet, Gamel, Daleth, Hey, and so forth, all the way down. This is Estrangela. This here is Classical Aramaic, and also the Neo-Aramaic uses the same form. So you have the two here. And this was used by the Hebrew people, what we call Jewish people, it was Ezra, and during his time that he decided instead of using old Hebrew letters, which they weren't using very much, and they had already been made captives in Chaldea, in Babylon. So he decided that it should be put in the Aramaic square letters. You're looking at this and people say, oh, no, 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 that's Hebrew, that's Hebrew. No, no, no. These letters are Aramaic letters during the time of Ezra. And this is what and this stuck. And during the time of Jesus, that's the letters that you would see. That's why when Jesus was crucified, they put it in three languages, the note on top of the cross. And they said it was Hebrew, but it wasn't Hebrew. It was Aramaic because Jesus did not use Hebrew. He spoke the tongue of the language of that time, and we've got plenty of scholarship to back that up here in the West, that at the time of Jesus, the language throughout Galilee and Samaria and also in Judea, the major language was Aramaic, different dialects of it, but it was Aramaic. In the north, where Jesus was, they spoke the northern Galilean Aramaic, which was close to the Ashuraya style. So, and so that's because the Assyrians took all the people captive in the northern Israel, which were 10 tribes, and scattered them throughout the Near East and repopulated the area with some Assyrians and other people.
Let me just say
Go
this
right
for a
ahead.
moment. I just want to paint a picture for people because dialect might not be understandable. If you're not someone who's kind of into languages and cultures and kind of what all that stuff is, this could be different talk for you. So let me say, if the northern people of America, if the folks from New York, Rhode Island, let's say Rhode Island, went down to Texas and took the people of Texas and brought them to Rhode Island, it does not matter if down in Texas they used to say park the car, because by the time 400 years later those people that said park the car go up and live in Rhode Island, in a few hundred years they're all going to be saying park the car, park the car. Okay, the R is going to be gone. So dialect, it's the same language, it's different dialects. Okay, so when Rabbi is talking about the Assyrians, and don't be mad at me, I have people that are like, your people kidnapped the Jewish people. I wasn't there, okay? But the Assyrians took captive 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel. There were 12 tribes, and we'll get into that at some point too in these series. But those 10 tribes were then living among Ashuraye, the people that were Assyrians speaking that particular dialect. So that's why, as you see these Jesus stories where they say to him or his disciples, "Oh, y'all aren't from around here. I can tell from the way you're talking. Y'all's from up north. Y'all talking like Yankees." Right. And I currently am living that reality because I moved from Michigan to Georgia. People know on a dime I'm not from Georgia. As soon as I open my mouth here, they're like, well, darling, you ain't from around here, are you? No, ma'am, I'm not. So this is what he's talking about. And it's so simple and so subtle, and we live it every day in our own real lives, but we don't necessarily understand that's what was happening at the time of Ishwa Nasraya.
And it's the same still because of the isolation and the different religions and so forth. If you go today to the Holy Land and go village to village, you will see that, and you will see the dialects, and I mean, there are some letters that I have to train my ear to hear them, probably 6 different ways. The same letter, because it's like the cha, a ga, a ra, and a jim, It's the same letter, written, it's the same. But and now, I mean, when I was growing up around that culture, and you'll see it like Gaza, because Gaza, the bulk of the Gaza people today are immigrants. So they came from their villages when they left, and they populated what we call the Gaza Strip today. But within that, people know which village you came from just by speaking to you. And the families, it's almost tribal. So these are like, they call them Ashair, which is the tribes ultimately. So these tribes moved and they settled in specific areas, and they kind of brought their cousins and so forth when they showed up. And they stayed enclosed on themselves. Very few of them would marry outside of that. So the traditions, a lot of them to this day, 2,000 years later after Jesus, they still live with that mindset. And those speech patterns, there is no way that you can go to Hebron and speak from Calkilia, which is a few miles away, and they would know you. They know you from, I mean, a few miles away, not Texas and New Hampshire. So
Yes.
so that's what Jesus grew up with. He had his dialect, and that's why, as you said, when Peter spoke, and it was like, whoa, 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 wait a minute, we know who you are. You're one of his buddies, and he had to deny that because they were being chased. So that's still living in the Near East, and and that's a lot of it is the Christians of the Near East as well. Though with the history and 1400 years of Islam, a lot of people adopted Islam as a religion, but those traditions, those tribal connections, those villages still maintain that. On top of that, even the clothes that they wear, they'll know you by that. And I'm sure it's the same way in northern Iraq and in Assyria, what was Assyria, but they'll know which village you're from just based on the type of embroidery and so forth, and the colors
The
that you
fibers, the colors,
everything.
yes.
So
There's a
you're
brand. It's a
yeah,
brand. Your
it is.
tribe has a brand. It's
Yeah.
whether you call it, the coat of arms or whatever they say in the West, like you have a brand to you. And this is why, just to bring it back around, this is why what George Lemsa was doing, what he did was revolutionary, because we'd never heard in the West, take with all due respect, okay, the West had never gotten the Bible as it had been, the teachings as they had been in the East. The West had only heard it, as Rabbi Errico said, through all of the scholastic, academic, religious, political nuances that have taken and migrated the message through different cultures over time and history into the West. This gentleman took us from Donat Mashiach, from the time of the Messiah, to 1900, like that, 1900 AD, just like that, by showing up, by getting on a plane and leaving one of those villages that Reverend Hanny's talking about, that if you went there today, you'd think that you'd see Moses and all of them hanging out because they look and live and eat and dress just like that. Rabbi Lemsa took it from that time to us here in America in one translation. And Rabbi Errico, you met him in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yes, the 1960s. So he had already, at that point, Rabbi Lemsa was already what, in his 60s, 70s himself. He was an older gentleman, Rabbi Errico, a young man. And tell us a little bit about the I don't know, whatever you want to talk about next. So you met him and you did this work, and what? Tell us what's next.
You see, this is what Western people do not understand, including the scholars of the Bible, do not understand how and what Dr. Lamza contributed to the West in that scriptures. They make fun of his scriptures. They put it down. They do all kinds of things about his scriptures, but because it's too hard. Their pride is ruined when you say, hey, look, you need to look at it a little differently here. And people can't stand that. Well, I know I'm highfalutin. I have everything that I learned all these years. It's tough when you find out, but it's utterly simple. There's such simplicity and in translation and everything, but they couldn't take it. In fact, when he came here to the States, they called him a liar. a cheat, and a fraud, because all Assyrian people are dead. They don't exist. They do not exist. And you call yourself an Assyrian, and you translated the Bible, and you're a fake and a fraud. It took him several years to convince him. And the more Assyrians began to show up in the States, then then they
More unicorns started to show up. More unicorns.
right. So this was a shock, and it still is to this very day. And scholars still fight his translation and everything about him over this very reason. But it's utterly simple. What did he do? And I always tell people, look, if people talk against Lamza and what he did, and they say his Bible is not good, his translation, other scholars say his translation is very poorly done, very bad. I said, ask them, please quote what he mistranslated. That's what I tell them. Quote what he mistranslated. Well, they can't. First of all, they can't read Aramaic to do it. I was called into I was on TV in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Lecture, and I had scrolls with me, but they were photostats of the scrolls, of the Aramaic text. And it happened that a bunch of students, Greek students, ministers, they were young ministers. They happened to catch it because they put me on the news, and I showed the scrolls, and I showed all that and talked about it, and in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And so several of the students went to their professor, who taught them Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew. They had to learn all three. They did learn some Aramaic, and the professor, and they said, could he address us? They were graduating Greek students of the Bible. They were not personally Greek. They were just Greek students, young ministers. I don't want to mention the denomination because I don't want to. I'm not trying to put down on anyone here. So, but it was a strong denomination, and the professor said, "You get that man to come here and show me those manuscripts. I can read Aramaic." And he says, "You get them. You have him show me those manuscripts, and when I see it and examine them," he says, I'll give him permission to address you graduating students." And so the students came to me, and first they called me, and then they came, picked me up, and said, "Will you come and meet our professor? He's the head of the religious department, and bring the scrolls so that you have copies of them and show it to him." And I said, "I'd be most happy to." So I did. I brought the scrolls, and he says, "Well, I want to read them to see if it's really authentic." Of course, it was of the New Testament. So I showed it to him, and he kept going over it, and he kept scratching his head. And I thought, "What's the matter, sir?" He says, "I can't read it." I said, "What do you mean you can't read it?" I said, "That's Aramaic." He said, "But I can't, that's not the Aramaic I know." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes." You know why? He was looking at the Eastern script of Aramaic, the Estrangela. He was looking at the Estrangela because that's what they were. There's no dots, no dashes. It's all consonants, strictly all consonants. And that's why another reason he couldn't read it, because there were no vowel sounds to help him to pronounce them. And he said, I just can't read this at all. I said, "No, I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him why he couldn't read it, because I wanted to speak to those Greek students." And so I didn't tell him why he couldn't read it, because he's used to the Aramaic that they teach in the universities and college. They do not teach Eastern Aramaic. They do not teach Estrangela. What they teach is, remember those three alphabets we had up at the beginning? And the third one, You say, oh, these are Hebrew letters. That's the Aramaic, because Ezra took Aramaic letters, the square letters, and put the whole Bible using those. And to this very day, they still use it. When you go to a butcher shop, a Jewish butcher shop, and you see all those Hebrew signs, those letters are Aramaic letters. You're not looking at Hebrew. Yes, if you pronounce it, you'll pronounce it with the Hebrew pronunciation, but the letters are all Aramaic. But see, I didn't say that to him. He said, I can't read it. He says, and you can read all this. I said, yes, I can. I'll tell you what it says. And I'll tell you what it means too. And then what was so funny, he says, you have my students. Go at it.
Robbie, what do you say to people then if they say to you, okay, so then if this guy had it right and this is the truth, then why isn't it catching on like wildfire? How do you
Well,
answer that?
well, people, you don't want to be told what you learn is incomplete. You don't want to be told that. I'm sorry. Our pride cannot take it. You see, with me, I was hungry to know. I mean, I was brought up with this. I know. When I learned the doctrines, the dogmas of the Roman Catholic Church because I wanted to become a priest, but left it. And then we got into Protestantism, and I know all the ways and thinking of the Protestants, but I understand it. The Bible wasn't written to us. That's what they don't get. It was written to Eastern people using Eastern expressions, Eastern ideas, Eastern ways of speaking, idioms, and the culture behind it. This is what makes it so difficult. And so we have 2,000 years of the East being buried. In fact, they don't, even in church history, they don't teach anything about the Church of the East. They maybe do now, but when I was going to the seminary and learned, they didn't teach us anything about the Church of the East. None of it, as if it never existed. And it was strong and the most outstanding church in the entire Middle East up until the 12th century. It started to decline after the 12th century. I mean, it's still in existence now, but I mean, its heyday, I'm talking about its heyday. It's lasted up until the 12th century. But you don't get that. They just don't teach it.
No, and I'm really glad that you brought that up because I shared with you offline and when we spoke earlier, I've recently was addressed by someone on social media who said, you can't be making sense. What you're teaching does not make sense. And I, did my best to show him the direction of Peshitta and why that is accurate, fundamentally accurate language, culture, psychology, etc. He said, there's no way you could know that. And I said, well, I'm an Assyrian and my heritage and whatever. I kind of gave him a little 10-second elevator speech. And this is what he said to me, more or less, that kind of stopped me dead in my tracks and has put me in a position now to say things that I have to say. And he said this. He said, well, somebody's lying then. And I said, what do you mean? He said, because there are other Assyrians who are teaching as well. I see them on social media. And he named several people. And y'all got Google. You can go find them if you want to know. And there is simply also the Holy Apostolic Catholic Assyrian Church of the East that exists. And I was raised in that church. My father was a deacon for 40 years in that church. But I'll tell you, he also struggled in that church because although it has Itat Medencha on it, the Church of the East has that label on it. With all due respect, Assyrian people in that denomination are practicing a tenet of Roman Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping I would have it here in time for today, but I'll have it for a future conversation, which is the liturgical book of the Church of the East where I was raised. And so does it have Lishana Aramaya, the Aramaic language? Yes, it sure does.
There's one of them.
There you go. There's, the Chaldean prayers. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Oh, and the Chaldean they're denominationally very Catholic. There's undeniable. The Assyrian Church of the East doesn't say they're Roman Catholic. There's nuances in Roman Catholicism. Mary is the mother of God, and different things where they split hairs, and the Church of the East does not. But fundamentally speaking, in the Assyrian Church of the East today, and the people who are following it and touting it today, they're not. I'm sorry, they're not teaching Urchet Mashiach. They're not teaching the way of the Messiah. They're teaching the way of indoctrination through the church that has taken place over years of transformation to be what it is today. We're using the Aramaic language to sell it. But, this Bible, this is the interpretation that the Church of the East was standing on. As a matter of fact, the introduction, the forward rather, was a preface, has a whole letter in it from Mar Ishai Shumon, the patriarch of the Church of the East, who was assassinated in the 70s. But his letter is at the front of this saying, George Lemsa's spot on. He knows what he's talking about because we're all from back home. And this is exactly how we say things and do things and believe and function. Except after his assassination, I don't know what happened to this translation being in the church. It's not what's in the church. In the culture, anyway, the psychology of that church is very Catholic. And so, for those of you who say, which Assyrian should you follow, that's your choice. I don't think any of us Assyrians are saying, come follow me. But you're going to have to choose as an audience member. You're going to have to do the due diligence. I'm sorry, the burden of proof is on your part. You have to be a discerning student. You have to be willing to see facts and allow your mind to be changed. I was very entrenched into the indoctrination of the religion I was raised in. And yet part of me always was wondering, that can't be. How can you say he lived in the belly of a whale for 3? There are things that it says in the Bible that we repeat in the West, and it just can't be real. It can't. We're all here on Earth. We know it's not possible. And yet we're then taught in the West to just suspend our disbelief and go, all things are possible with God.
Yeah.
And that's the part that Rabbi Errico gave his life to so far, these 90 years, God bless you. His whole life has been for this. Rabbi Lemsa never got married, never had children. His whole life, 24/7, 365, was this. Reverend Hanny has things he could be doing. I don't have to do this.
No.
But when we individually and collectively realized what we have now in our hands as information and truth, and then actually started integrating it into our lives, this way of Jesus, Orchet Mashiach, something got activated. The realm of possibilities opens up for you when you are in these teachings. And if you're not in them from the correct lens, if you're seeing them through Western eyes and ears, then you will guaranteed miss as much as someone from Texas interpreting something in Australia. It's two different worlds. It's two different worlds. So, Robbie, your answer to this work in your own right, I have to talk about this before we go today. Reverend Hanny, is there something you wanted to say? Because you brought that book out.
Actually, what I wanted,
anything?
what you were mentioning, and I think it's critical today to mention it, not for any political reasons, for strictly humanitarian reasons. Christianity in the East still is suffering. And when I came to this country and I tell people I'm Palestinian, they automatically assume that I'm Muslim. And when I told them I'm Christian, and my mom was born in Jerusalem. Her family is from Gaza, and Gaza City was a Christian city. It was actually an area that the Ottomans set for Christians to go and be and practice. And they have very old churches. I think the third oldest church in the world is in Gaza City, and most of it has been destroyed recently. But so Christianity in the East is suffering now, and that's one of the reasons the Church of the East ended up engaging with the Roman Catholic because they were under attack. They were trying to survive. So that, but again, not politics, just strictly humanitarian. That what we're watching on TV today is a lot of Christian villages, historical Christian villages, and historical Christian people are under attack still to this day, and by the West. So it's important to understand that. It's important. The reason I love that we're doing this. Eastern people still exist. Eastern Christians still exist, and they have something to say. They carry the tradition. They carry the dialects. The Aramaic is embedded in my language. I grew up with it. And yes, I was in school, I was taught formal Arabic, but at home, I wasn't speaking formal Arabic. I had to use practically a dictionary. And to this day, I mean, right here, yesterday, when Rabbi was talking about Milta, this is an done by a Chaldean priest. This is an Arabic Chaldean or Arabic Aramaic dictionary. I went and Rabbi and I talked about the word Milta, that even taken Milta from Aramaic, because you have to, if you speak Aramaic like Jesus did, you have to be in that. To take it into formal Arabic, you lose it, just like you would lose it in English. Maybe not as badly, but it had 8, 9 meanings. And if you are not familiar with the culture, with the way of speaking and the context of when it was said, it could mean anything. It could be a judgment. It could be just something being said. It could be a word. But Milta could also be the essence, the heart of something, and that's or the energy of it. And when Dr. Errico was speaking yesterday, he really went into that, and you could just see that even no matter what you tried, Rabbi, when you went in Aramaic, it lit up, and then when you tried to bring it into English, you did an awesome job. Yeah, it's that beat that was in it that John was trying. So it's important for us to remember there are still people there, and there are a lot of Christians from the East. But unfortunately, Rebecca, what you touched on is that even the ones who know, they are enclosed in, even in their diaspora. They close in, and not many, you don't see native, people of Michigan or people of San Diego or people of El Cajon go, saying, hey, I'm looking for a church. I just moved here. Let me go join the Chaldean church, Catholic church. It's only attracting the same people, the Chaldeans, and they're thinning and thinning and thinning. So it's lost. Though we might be able to pick up more, but we don't go knock on that door. We go look for an English speaking church, and they do the service in English, but it's lost. So there is something, and what we're offering here, and the reason I've been working with Dr. Errico since the late 90s, is that the value of what we're leaving, and thank goodness for YouTube and the recordings that we're putting out there, is hopefully
Yes.
it will last. Because and our reach is really dependent on the community that listens to us. I constantly tell people, and I think you did an awesome job a few months ago when you spoke about this, this is so important and so freeing. It's not religion. It's a way of living. It's a way of freeing yourself to bring people into it and share that. And that's why it was called the good news, because it was just good news of a different way of living.
Mm-hmm.
Hanny, I appreciate you saying two things in particular. What you just said is brilliant, first of all, but two things. Number one, this isn't religious. In case you're wondering what religion we're touting, what we're pastors and reverends and ministers of, it's one thing. It's Orchet Mashiach. We're really passionate about the way of Jesus, this teaching that he brought that was transcendental. It went past your gender, sex, orientation, politics, religion, ethnicity, language, socioeconomic standing. It went beyond all of it, because it's at the essence of you, the self that you were assigned when you came into this world. There is a birthright that comes with that self. And we're going to be getting way into that each month. But the other thing that you said that really brought me to tears as I sat here was, and it breaks my heart that we even have to say it, but the people of the East are here. We exist. It's funny in a world today that everybody wants their label on a flag and to wave it and to have their special day, week, month, or occasion to identify themselves. But there are people who've been here. God bless America. It's half an hour old. Okay. There are people who've been in this world, this cultures that have been on this planet for thousands of years. Thousands. The people who brought you fire and wheels, math. It was not Steve Jobs. It was people of the East. And we're still here. We're still here and we're all over the world because we've been destroyed and scattered by other nations who just didn't care to let us be. And listen, we can even get past that because, as my father would say, "Barnasha zebunile brati." Humanity is fragile, my daughter. We're dealing with human egos. Everybody's been a master. Everybody's been a slave on this planet. Everybody. Everybody has been the thief and everybody has been the robbed. The question now is, can we bring the consciousness, the transcendental way of Joshua of Nazareth, the anointed one, that he was offering? You don't have to take it. He never forced anybody to take it. But there is a truth behind those teachings that anyone can access, apply, and benefit from, that I genuinely believe will be the answer on this planet. And you don't have to be a Baptist or a Nazarene. You don't have to give up anything, really. It's really funny. You can be pagan and follow the way. You can be Muslim and follow the way. You can be gay or straight and follow the way. That's the brilliance of it, because the way is simply a birthright activation. It is receiving the frequential birthright that comes with the self in here and employing it through you as you into the world. It will end your suffering no matter what circumstance you're in. It will grant you wisdom no matter what situation you face. And so, Hanny, to hear a man from the Near East have to look into a camera and say, "I exist," makes my stomach hurt. Makes me sad. It makes me remember my father and my grandfather. It makes me remember the hundreds of cousins and aunties and uncles who gave up their lives. They're not alive. So that I could stand here, America, the land of freedom, that its own people seem to not respect most days.
Yeah.
But we understand the value of being able to stand in a place that lets you walk and talk freely, dress freely, eat freely, and yet still go home and speak whatever language you want and have whatever practices you want. What?
Yeah.
And so, yes, we are honored to be in the West. Thank you for having us, America and planet Earth. But we're not going to pretend every month that we don't know something and that we aren't that very thing that we know. So, yes, his pedigree actually does earn him something. It does. He came from there. It does earn him something. The daughter and granddaughter of immigrants and refugees, yes, I do. I absolutely have something of merit to share. And that gentleman there, with almost a century of life, more than 70 years in the world of ministry, religion, consciousness, metaphysics, teaching, authorship, and noted speaking internationally, he's got something to say. And every month, we're going to come and say it to each other at the least.
Yes.
And then hopefully, all of you, you will come and join us in the chubbah, the love the shlama, the peace, and the huyada, the unity. I'm going to have to learn if that's the Aramaic word or if I just said an Assyrian word. But huyada is what we say in Assyrian. There's an expression that we have in Assyrian culture. We say, without hubba and huyada, without love and unity, we are like the fishermen without a net at sea. We won't gather much. We will be batile, empty, without. So, Hanny, thank you. I am touched so much to walk with you in this journey and to sit with you with Rabbi Errico. Would either of you like to say final words before we go today?
Yes, all three of us will be together again Wednesday of next week.
Ah, Dr. Errico with the gratuitous plug. Let me just tell you, it's in the chat. I already put it in the chat.
Oh, is it there?
I said you can get more of these teachings at nura.com. Every Wednesday, I want you to know, though, one or some or all of us are teaching at Nura Foundation at the Aramaic School of Light. Okay, this class is free every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, but you do have to register. So go to nura.com or call the office, which is on the numbers on the website. Speak with Lynn. She will get you all set up and taken care of. You can attend. Of course, all of the recordings of those classes are on the Nura Foundation website. So feel free to connect there to check out the archives. You've got a million hours to catch up on if you're just finding us. You've got a whole lifetime of recordings over there at the Nura Foundation. But the first Wednesday of every month, the three of us come together and do a team teaching at Nura. So definitely, you're right, Rabbi. Next Wednesday. Anything else you want them to know?
Yes, that we also each one take a Wednesday night also.
Yeah.
Solo.
That's right.
You can hear just Reverend Hanny, you will hear me, or you can hear Rebecca. So that also is inclusive. So come and join us, you see. And we do it out of love. This whole thing is built on love and faith. That's how we do this whole thing. To share. It's a sharing, not telling you you're wrong. No, it's sharing. And some things we may be wrong, some things we may be right, but nonetheless, it's a sharing done freely. Isn't that so?
Amen. That is so. It is so. Reverend Hanny, final words, my brother?
Really love this. Looking forward to next week and next month. So
Excellent. I feel like I have a big brother in Hanny. I never had a big brother. I was the oldest. I finally got a big brother here in the family, in our Aramaic family. Well, listen, everybody. I love that you all joined us today, whether you are watching us live. I know I got a couple comments from the folks that are watching live letting us know you're here. I don't have questions in the chat, so we don't have questions to address. But thank you for those of us who've joined. Thank you for those of you who joined us live. And thank you for those of us who are going to watch this on demand, watching the replay. Please share this. This is free. There are people waiting. They can't afford classes. They wish they could learn. They don't know how to get access to information. This is free. If you'd like to make a donation to Nura Foundation or the work that we do with the Godly Woman Network, you can go to our websites and make donations. Those certainly appreciated. These efforts, we do put things out to the community, and those finances do support us. But your sharing of this costs nothing. So thank you for liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing. You know all the things to do here on social media. We appreciate you doing that and helping these platforms grow. We will see you next month.